Have you ever felt like you didn't belong anywhere, like you were just extra space in someone else's story? A shadow people looked through, not at? This is a story for those who have ever felt invisible. It's not about grand heroes or perfect families. It's about a quiet girl left behind by the world, and a quiet man forgotten by it too. Two people who never asked for much, just a place where they could finally feel seen. So come with me, far from the noise of cities and the rush of busy lives, to a quiet town nestled deep in the hills of Vermont. A place of winding dirt roads, whispering pine trees, and winters that speak in silence. It's where the story of Clara begins, a girl born into loss, raised in silence, and destined to learn that sometimes the people we least expect are the ones who teach us what love really means. It was the coldest night of the year when Clara came into the world. The wind howled through the trees like wolves crying out to the moon. Snow fell in heavy, silent waves over the rooftops of the small mountain town, blanketing the world in white stillness. Inside a drafty wooden cabin on the edge of the woods, a woman lay still, her breath already gone. She had died giving birth, alone except for an elderly midwife whose trembling hands wrapped the baby in a thin, worn blanket. The child cried, soft, desperate, clinging to life with her very first breath. No one knew the mother's name, no one came looking, and the father? He was just a ghost of rumor. Just when the midwife feared what might become of the child, the door creaked open. In stepped Mrs. Agnes Holloway, a widow known for her sharp eyes and sharper opinions. She took one look at the child and said simply, "Give her to me." The midwife hesitated. "But you already have Marianne." "I said give her to me." And just like that, the baby was placed into Agnes's arms. She named her Clara, held her close for a moment, but only a moment. What Agnes didn't know was that this tiny, fragile child would one day challenge every cold stone in her heart and change the course of more than just her own life. Agnes brought Clara home that same night. The fire in the hearth crackled low as she stepped through the doorway of her narrow cottage, her grip firm around the bundle in her arms. Upstairs, Marianne, her daughter of 9 years, was already fast asleep beneath a quilted blanket, her cheeks rosy from the winter chill. Agnes didn't place Clara in a crib. There was no soft welcome, no warm milk waiting, just a folded cloth laid in a drawer beside the kitchen hearth. That's where Clara spent her first night. From that moment on, Clara was not a daughter. She was simply there. Marianne grew up draped in affection, her hair always combed, her laughter echoing through the halls like wind chimes. Each birthday brought a handmade dress, each scraped knee a kiss. Clara grew up in the quiet spaces in between. She fetched water, swept ash from the fireplace, and made sure the butter stayed churned. Her dresses were stitched from old curtains. Her hair was tied back with frayed twine. And though they lived under the same roof, the gap between the two girls was as wide as winter itself. Agnes never once raised a hand to Clara, but she didn't have to. The ache came in smaller things. The way her name was called like a chore, the way plates were set with one piece of bread less, the way love was measured and Clara never quite measured up. Clara learned early that her place in the house was earned, not given. She worked harder, spoke less, smiled through the cold. And yet, in the rare quiet of early morning, before the sun rose and the world expected something from her, Clara would sometimes close her eyes and wonder what it felt like to be someone worth keeping. It happened quietly, like the slow turning of seasons. One day her eyes seemed to carry more light. Another day, the way the wind played with her chestnut hair caught someone's attention. She never wore ribbons, never tried to be noticed. But still, people began to notice. The butcher's son lingered longer when she came by for flour. The schoolboys, once smitten with Marianne's wit and well-pressed skirts, now turned their heads when Clara passed by with firewood balanced on her shoulder. Even Thomas Gray, the heir to the largest orchard in the county, who Marianne had dreamed of marrying since they were children, began to find excuses to stop by the Holloway home when Clara happened to be around. Clara didn't ask for the attention, she barely noticed it. But Marianne did. She saw the way eyes followed Clara in church, the way old women whispered about her natural grace, the way Thomas smiled, not politely, but longingly, at the girl in the hand-me-down coat. At first, Marianne said nothing, just watched, lips pressed tight. But envy is like a splinter in the heart, small, silent, and easy to ignore, until it festers. And from that silence, something sharp began to grow. Not just jealousy, not just resentment, but the kind of quiet hatred that doesn't shout, it waits, it schemes, it smiles sweetly while twisting the knife. And Clara, too gentle to see it coming, had no idea a storm was beginning to gather right inside her own home. It happened on a damp spring evening, the kind where rain lingers just above the ground like a ghost, unsure where to settle. The kitchen windows glowed a soft amber. Clara was outside by the well, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands raw from scrubbing muddy linens in cold water. Her hair clung to her cheeks in damp curls. The world inside the house was warm and golden. Her world was soap and silence. Just as she wrung out the last cloth, a sound caught her attention. Soft laughter, hushed voices drifting through the open window. She crept closer, bare feet silent on the wooden porch. Her breath caught when she recognized the voices. Marianne and Mrs. Agnes. "I still don't understand why you keep her," Marianne said, her voice sharp beneath the hush. "She doesn't belong here, she never did." A pause. Then Agnes's voice, tired and unguarded. "I know. I should have left her that night. I took her in out of guilt, not love. She was never supposed to stay." The words hit Clara harder than any slap could. Her knees nearly buckled. She clutched the wet cloth against her chest, not to dry herself, but as if it could hold her together. All these years, every quiet hope, every smile she tried to earn, a lie. Clara didn't cry, not then. She just stepped away from the wall, letting the darkness fold around her like a closing door. And in the quiet of the rain, something inside her shattered. Quietly, completely. The morning after the truth broke her, Clara woke to silence colder than the frost outside. There were no more polite glances, no pretending. Agnes no longer offered hollow words or spared gestures. Clara was no longer a secret shame hidden behind chores. She was an inconvenience, now made visible. That afternoon, as gray clouds rolled over the hills, Agnes called Clara outside. The wind tugged at the hem of Clara's skirt as she stepped onto the porch. Marianne stood behind her mother, arms folded, lips curled into a faint, satisfied smile. "You're getting married," Agnes said, like she was announcing a weather report. Clara blinked. "Married? To who?" "To Noah Trenton. He lives beyond the ridge, in that old cabin near the birch trees." Clara's heart dropped. Everyone in town knew Noah. Quiet, poor, lived alone. Some whispered he was odd, others pitied him. Most just ignored him, like he wasn't even there. "Please," Clara said, voice trembling, "don't do this." Agnes's eyes narrowed. "Don't call me mother. I'm not your mother. I never was. You'll marry Noah tomorrow, and when you do, you'll leave this house. For good." Clara stood frozen, the wind catching her breath. Behind Agnes, Marianne didn't look away. Didn't blink. Her smile remained, like she'd finally erased a stain from her perfect world. The next day, without ceremony, without a dress, without even a goodbye, Clara walked down the dirt path toward the forest's edge. All she carried was a cloth bag of old belongings and the last broken pieces of what she once called a life. At the cabin's porch stood Noah, silent, still, unreadable. He didn't smile, he didn't speak. And yet, for the first time in her life, Clara was not stepping into the unknown. She was being handed to it. Clara didn't know what she expected when she crossed the threshold of Noah's cabin. Perhaps more coldness, perhaps silence so deep it would swallow her whole. What she didn't expect was nothing. No welcome, no rejection, just a room that smelled faintly of pine, a leaking roof overhead, and a man who kept his distance. Noah closed the door behind her and set down her bag without a word. Then, with slow, deliberate steps, he unrolled a faded rug in the corner of the room. "You can sleep here," he said quietly. Not cold, not kind, just neutral. Clara nodded. Her throat was tight, her heart a stone in her chest. She laid down without changing, curled beneath her thin shawl as if it could shield her from everything that had happened. Noah took the bed across the room but faced the wall. He said nothing more. That night, Clara cried but silently. There were no tears left to waste on people who had already forgotten her, and yet, the silence here was different. It didn't accuse, it didn't resent, it just let her be. At dawn, she awoke to an unfamiliar sound, a soft knock, and then Noah stepping in with a bundle wrapped in cloth. He set it down beside her. Dry bread, a few apples, nothing more. Her stomach growled, betraying her. "Eat," he said. She looked up. "What about you?" "I already ate," he answered. But Clara noticed there was no second plate. He had given her the only food he had. And something inside her, a place she thought long dead, shifted. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was kindness. A kindness so unfamiliar, it hurt to be held so gently by it. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to earn her place. She was simply allowed to exist. The days that followed moved slowly, like mist rolling through the valley before sunrise. Clara and Noah rarely spoke. They shared the same space, the same meals, the same fire, but not the same thoughts. Not yet. And yet, something unspoken passed between them in the quiet. When Clara swept the floor, Noah chopped wood. When she boiled water, he brought it in. They moved around each other like shadows, never colliding, never commanding, simply coexisting in fragile peace. But unlike anyone Clara had lived with before, Noah never stared with judgment, never barked orders, never treated her as less. That, more than anything, caught her off guard. One afternoon, Clara returned from the village with a basket of vegetables in her arms. The sky had turned gray, and rain kissed the dirt path beneath her bare feet. As she stepped onto the porch, she slipped. The basket fell, vegetables scattered, mud splashed up her legs. A couple from town passed by and snickered. "Noah's wife, huh? Looks more like a stray." Clara knelt down quietly, hands trembling as she gathered the food. She didn't look up. She didn't cry. Then, a hand. Rough, calloused, reaching down, helping her collect the mess. Noah. He didn't speak. He didn't pity. He simply helped Katie in the mud beside her, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That night, as they dried their clothes near the fire, Clara looked at him for a long time. And for the first time she asked, "Why? Aren't you like the others?" Noah's voice was low, steady. "Because I know what it feels like to be seen as nothing." And in that moment, Clara realized he wasn't saving her. It was just finally being seen, too. Spring crept in slowly, softening the hard ground and painting the trees in pale green. Days passed quietly in the cabin. The silence between Noah and Clara was no longer hollow. It had become something like comfort, like understanding. But one afternoon, that calm was broken. Noah came home later than usual, his coat dusty, boots worn from travel. Slung over his shoulder was a canvas bag Clara had never seen before. He didn't say much, just looked at her and said, "Come with me." Clara hesitated. "Where?" Noah didn't answer. He simply turned and began walking. With cautious steps and a pounding heart, she followed. They passed the ridge, walked through the wildflower fields and into a part of the hills Clara had never seen. As the sun dipped low, gold spilled across the landscape like fire. Then, they reached it. A tall iron gate stood before her, intricate and rustless. Beyond it, a mansion, red-roofed, surrounded by manicured trees, its windows glowing like something out of a fairy tale. Clara stopped in her tracks. "Noah, what is this?" He turned to her, voice quiet but steady. "This is my home." Her breath caught. "But you live in a cabin." "I chose to." Confusion swept over her. "You lied to me?" "I needed to know," he said gently, "if someone could see me, not what I own." Clara took a step back, her voice cracked. "So all those nights, all those empty plates, they were a test?" Noah looked down. Clara's chest tightened. The space that had once been safety now felt like a stage, like everything had been watched. "I need time," she whispered, and turned away. This time, Noah didn't stop her. And for the first time since they met, she chose distance. not from fear, but from heartbreak. Clara didn't know where her feet were taking her. She walked for hours, the late spring wind tugging at her shawl, the sky turning to ash above the hills. When she stopped, she was standing in front of a door she never thought she'd knock on again. The Holloway house. She hesitated, not from fear, but from clarity. Then she raised her hand and knocked. The door swung open, and there stood Marianne, dressed in pastel silks, her hair pinned just so. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed into a smirk. "Well," she said with venom wrapped in honey, "look who came crawling back." Clara's voice was calm. "I'm not here to stay, I just needed a quiet place, for a moment." Marianne laughed. "Quiet? You forget where you are. You don't belong here." Clara didn't flinch. She looked Marianne straight in the eyes. "I used to believe that," she said. "That I was no one, that I was lucky just to be tolerated. But I don't believe that anymore." Footsteps echoed behind them. Agnes appeared in the hallway, leaning on her cane, her gaze as sharp as ever. Clara turned to her. "Why did you never love me?" A pause. Then Agnes answered, flat and unapologetic. "Because you were never mine." Clara nodded, and for the first time the truth didn't cut, it simply settled. "I forgive you," she whispered. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I need to be free." Marianne's smirk faded. Agnes said nothing. Clara stepped back from the doorway, sunlight brushing her face. "I don't need your love anymore," she said softly. "I found it somewhere else." And with that she turned. Not in anger, not in pain, but in peace. Night had fallen by the time Clara reached the mansion's gates. The iron felt colder than before. The lights inside the house flickered gently, like candles waiting for someone to come home. She stood there for a moment, unsure if she still belonged. Then the door opened. Noah stood beneath the porch light, not moving. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look surprised, just hopeful. Like a man who had waited in silence, unsure if hope was foolish or sacred. Clara stepped forward slowly. "You shouldn't have hidden it from me," she said softly. "I know," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't trust you to see me for me. I was wrong." Clara looked down, then back up. "And I didn't trust myself to believe someone could love without needing something back." A pause, then she continued, her voice trembling. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the way you gave me your last piece of bread. Maybe it was how you never asked anything of me. Maybe it was just the silence. But I know this, if I walk away now, I'll regret it forever." Noah stepped forward, slowly, and took her hand. "I don't need anyone else," he said. "Only you." No promises, no grand speeches, just that. They stood there, under the soft light, two people who had once been discarded, now choosing each other, freely. And for the first time, no one else had a say. A month passed. Spring had painted the garden in color. Lavender, daisies, wild roses, all blooming like soft confessions. The air smelled of earth and second chances. Noah led Clara out one morning, his hand quietly finding hers. They walked barefoot through the dew-covered grass until they reached the edge of the orchard. There, beneath a tree in full blossom, he turned to her. "I never wanted a wedding like the one we had," he said. "That wasn't a choice, that was survival." Clara looked at him, her heart already full. Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. No jewels, no gold, just polished wood and silver crafted by his own hands. "This time," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I want to choose you. Not because I have to, not because anyone told me to, but because I love you. Will you marry me again, as yourself and as mine?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I've always chosen you," she whispered, "even when I didn't know it yet." And in that moment, there were no guests, no music, no dress. Just a promise. Soft, certain, forever. Sometimes we have to be cast aside to discover where we truly belong. Clara wasn't chosen out of love, she wasn't raised with warmth, but in the quiet of rejection she found something rare. Someone who saw her, not for what she lacked, but for all she quietly carried. And maybe that's what love really is. Not loud, not perfect, but patient. If you've ever felt invisible, forgotten, or unworthy, remember this. Someone out there sees your worth, even if they haven't said it yet. And one day they just might reach for your hand and never let go. And if this story found a quiet part of your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone else might need it too.